Hello and welcome to the British Council ELTons Festival of Innovation 2024. My name is Chia Chong, and we've been coming to you live streaming since this morning at 6 a.m. UK time. It is now 1 p.m. And this is not just any series of live sessions. You are attending the first ever ELTons Festival. But what are the ELTons? Many describe the ELTons as the Oscars of our industry, our world of English language teaching, a chance to celebrate those that push for innovation to solve complex problems and deal with the current issues of our world. This year, the ELTons take on a brand new format, providing a accessible and more relevant reach to our wider audiences, as opposed to our traditional awards ceremony in London, reaching educators, publishers, writers, learners, parents, policymakers, education managers. Which category do you belong to? It's really exciting to see so many people from all over the world in the chat box participating. This will be a very engaging and interactive session, so do continue to use the chat box to have your say. If you have any questions and you're joining us on Zoom events, please look below and click on the Q&A box. You can put your questions and you can even vote each other's questions up if you find a question particularly relevant. This session will also be streamed on Facebook Live. So if you're joining us on Facebook, please put your questions and poll answers in the chat box. Those joining us on Zoom events, when there is a poll, you will see a poll pop up on your screen. Feel free to use that to select the right answer for you. Speaking of polls, let's get on to our first poll to talk about today's topic, teaching global issues. How often do you incorporate teaching global issues in your lessons? Is it never, sometimes, often, or in every lesson? One thing I found looking through the ELTons finalists this year, there are so many mentions of global issues and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. I've got my little SDG badge here for today. How about you? How often do you incorporate the teaching of global issues in your lessons? Remember, if you're joining us on Facebook Live, just put the answer in the chat box. And if you're joining us on Zoom events, just click on the right answer in your pop-up poll. Now, we're going to close the poll very soon, so do answer very, very quickly. And let's have a look at the answers you've given us. Interesting. So an overwhelming 55% of you say sometimes, 40% of you say often, only 2% say in every lesson, and 3% of you, very honest, you say never. Well, hopefully by the end of today's lightning talks by our four presenters, Sam Whittam, Mariela Hill, Robbins, and Sirhajwan Idek, you will feel slightly differently about global issues and incorporating them into your lessons. Now, without further ado, let's have our first lightning talk. This is how it's going to work. Each speaker will have only 5 minutes to deliver their talk on their topic. To start us off, it's Sam Whittam. Sam is a product development manager at Magenta Publishing and Digital Solutions, developing material for schools in Turkey. Sam is here today as a finalist for the ELTons in the category of Excellence in Course Innovation with his innovation, the Globals. Over to you, Sam. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. So today we're going to be looking at how we can prepare students for a complex world. And I looked at this question and I thought, before we look at this question, I'd like to define the question. Let's think about what's coming. What is the complex world? What are we going to face? What should we prepare for? And I've made a short list, and of course you can add to this list. There are lots more things. One of the things I think I'm focusing on is
Sam, we've lost Sam for a little bit, but don't worry, he'll be back very soon. Sam, hello, Sam. Do we have Sam again? Do you want to try again, perhaps?
Can I carry on? Okay, sorry. So we have virtual reality, we have changing in technology, we have AI. In over the last 5 years, there's been so many changes. We also have the workforce needs changes, and those are things that change constantly over the last 50, 100, 150 years. So as educators, we have to think about those, don't we? We have to think about what we're teaching our students. We also have to think about those global challenges that we may face that can be climate change, inequality, pandemics, and we got direct connection with the SDGs there as well. And also we've got the ethical questions with technology and the growing usage and data and the role of humans in all of that. And so we've got the Sustainable Development Goals, these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which connect nicely with all of the problems and the complexities that we're going to face in the world. And going across my screen now, lots more problems. And it doesn't encompass everything, but there are lots of things that the SDGs do cover here. So why are they important? We give the learners the opportunity to learn about the world in a real way. They can experience things, they can become active in the world as well. It's not just learning through a text or through pictures, but they can take part in it. And in a world where empathy and compassion has been dropping down a little bit, it's a good way to teach that in a natural way as well. And most importantly for me is that the students and teachers, they're inspired, and often the teachers will not lead the way. The students will lead the way for the inspiration for the teachers. And they both become these agents for change as well. So why should they be in the English classes? English classes are probably the ones that, have the most freedom. We have the most creativity. We're offering problems. We're looking at solutions. We can give the students that responsibility as well. It's not just language skills that we're looking at. There are many, many things. And if you're looking at tomorrow, and based on the poll, I know some of you are looking at sustainable development in your classes. If you go to Google or any search engine and you Google, how can I introduce this into my classroom? There are a few tips I want to pass across when we created the globals. One of them, the most important for me, I think, is to make it relevant. We have to make this goal relevant for the students. It has to be something they recognize. We have this Eurocentric view. When we hear about sustainable development, we often think of countries far away. We think of Africa, South America, the rainforest, and things like that. But what we do is we try to encourage the sustainable development from the local community. And students can make that connection. They can bond with it as well, and then make a change in their local community. We have to have multiple opportunities for language practice. When you Google how to integrate, you will often just find something about make a presentation about the goal to the class. But the way that we did it with the globals is we have this scaffolding technique, not just scaffolding language, but scaffolding knowledge about the goals step by step, so that by the end of it, these students have all the knowledge they need. And we have to make it fun and engaging, which means that we want activities that have the students making that change. And this is where, as I mentioned, the agents for change. We have projects, and this is what I recommend. Have projects, have the students doing something. Begin in the local community. Have them going out, making that change. And here are a few examples you can see of what we have the students doing at the moment in Turkey, the changes that we're trying to have them making. So these is things that we want the social development goals, and we want the change to move out from the classroom into the local community, the national community, the internationally, and hopefully the global community.
Thank you so much, Sam. I was about to come in and say, your time's up. I love what Sam said about how English language classrooms have the most freedom and creativity. It made me giggle a little bit, but then it kind of made me also think that is so true. And that's why we need to be incorporating other skill developments and the development of skills and also global knowledge of global issues in through our lessons. And we see that in Mona Sawan's comment about all the different skills that we should be helping students develop and the different kinds of knowledge that we should be helping students develop. And we also have Mark here, Mark Bentuzal, also mentions about how we can help prepare students for a complex world using a holistic approach. I love that. A holistic approach is exactly what Sam is talking about right here. Thank you very much, Sam. And over to our next lightning talk. Do you see how this works now? We have only 5 minutes. The next person is Mariela Hill. She is a TESOL master's graduate and is the publisher for global content and methodologies at Macmillan Education, and is passionate about childhood development, sustainability, and inclusion in education. She's here today as a finalist for the ELTons 2024 in the category of Innovation in Learner Resources with her innovation, Changemakers. Mariela, your time starts now.
Thank you, Chia. Hello, I'm grateful to be here representing Macmillan and telling you about Changemakers. Changemakers is a space for teachers to share their actions their students are taking to create the world they want to see. It's a space for them to share their vision. Anyone can participate, students of all ages in any country. It's an open space and all are welcome. Today, through examples of what teachers have posted on Changemakers, I will show you that not only can we help students prepare for a future complex world, but we can help them engage with it now, at any age, in simple ways that are meaningful and powerful. The first contribution is from a Year 7 class in Turkey. Their class decided to answer the question, how long does your trash stay in the landfills? Students investigated this information, collected pieces of trash, and made posters. Did you know chewing gum lasts 5 years in a landfill? I didn't. Questions like this one can come from students themselves, from the classroom materials, or from the teacher. So one way to start to prepare students for a complex world is to notice when a question is worth exploring with them and creating the space for them to answer it. Such a simple activity can lead us to much learning and powerful discussion. While students were collecting objects they throw away in their everyday lives, they were also developing self-awareness of their actions and their impact. And while they were investigating information and making posters, they were developing the skill of being analytical and drawing conclusions based on evidence. These are skills that they need to be positive citizens of the world. Let's look at another example. This next contribution is from a teenager student in Greece. She created a video about fast fashion. This refers to the clothing we buy cheaply that doesn't last very long, but we often don't mind because it was so cheap and we can easily replace it. This teenager feels strongly about the impact of this cycle. She wanted to raise awareness of the issue and provide advice on how to avoid fast fashion. So she created slides and recorded her video. If you go onto the Changemakers World Live online site and watch it, you will see the empathy this student feels for others. She's engaged with the issue deeply and she calls us to action, inviting us to share her goal of being a more responsible consumer. The skills students build when they engage with the world in this way are in fact global citizenship skills, and these teachers are educating students to be positive global citizens. Global citizenship education is not a subject area like history or math. Rather, it can be a part of any class because it's a way of engaging with the world. Global citizenship education encourages students to understand their rights and responsibilities as members of society and to think and act accordingly. By connecting to issues that are relevant in their communities, as Sam said, students are motivated to learn in order to take action. These actions support students' social, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral growth. It can be helpful to have a vision for how students can grow into global citizens. So, what does a global citizen look like? Global citizens are above all curious people who don't have all the answers, but choose to engage with the questions thoughtfully. They're open to learning about many topics. As they learn, they increase their self-awareness and their knowledge and appreciation of others who are different from them. They're aware of our similarities as well, our common humanity, and the way we're all interconnected and interdependent. And ultimately, they become dedicated to working toward common goals, making them willing to work collaboratively, even when it isn't easy. I'd like to show you one more example of a contribution to change makers, which, like the previous ones, shows some of these skills in action. In this example, students from a class in Argentina read a simple book by Todd Parr called It's Okay to Be Different. In this example, students from a class, each student wrote a sentence about another way in which it's okay to be different and made a drawing. They then produced a video with the images of their drawings and their voices. This is a collaborative exercise where each student's contribution makes a small part of a bigger piece. Each student's voice joins the others as they create awareness and appreciation of differences, which is essential in work towards reducing inequalities. By posting their contribution to a communal space like Changemakers, they then connect to an even wider community. And we realize we're doing this work together. I hope these examples will inspire you and your students to take a small action. Dive into a question or topic that your students care about. Create space to understand a topic, to problem solve, to learn together. Connect with others who are affected, care, and/or know something that could help. And don't shy away from sharing it with the world. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mariela. I'm trying hard not to cry right now. But one of the key things that you both Sam Whittam and Mariela Hill spoke about, and also brought up by Felicia in the chat box, is the fact that we have long gone from the days where, course materials and English language teaching classes were about, the British man with the bowler hat and the walking stick. And we've moved from that into looking at cultures around the world, how different people live, the problems around the world. And now we are at that precipice of another change. It is not enough to just give students a reading article about the pyramids of Egypt or what they eat in China. It is important to get students to become, as Felicia mentions, agents of change. And Sam used the phrase agents of change that we saw again in Mariela's presentation, helping students take control and feel empowered by their ability to make those changes. And those examples that Mariela showed were just absolutely inspiring. I'm sure we can all take those ideas and go to our classrooms tomorrow morning and make that change in our lessons. Before we bring on our third speaker, I have another poll for you. How do you teach learners about global issues? Now, I mentioned a few there. You could give them a reading article about a global issue. A, raising awareness through reading or through listening. Or B, you could get them to examine issues through discussing them. C, assigning projects and research to get them to take control and explore on their own. After all, with the internet, it's so easy to do that these days. So inquiry-based learning. D, facilitating interactions with other communities. Something we'll hear more about from Sirhajwan, but I don't want to give a spoiler. E, encouraging behavioral change. So again, making students that agent of change and action. Or F, not my role to focus on global issues. Now, remember, if you're joining us on Facebook Live, which we're streaming on, you might not see the pop-up poll, but you can use the chat box to tell us your answer. Is it A, B, C, D, E, or F? And if you are joining us on Zoom events, click your answer now. We're going to close the poll and have a look at some of the answers you've given us. Okay, so it's quite a relief that only 2% of you say it's not my role to focus on global issues. And I really hope to see 0% by the end of this session. Hopefully all our 4 speakers will convince you otherwise. 29% is tied between raising awareness through reading and listening activities and project-based learning, inquiry-based learning using projects and research. 24% of you say to examine issues through discussions, a great way to get students to be curious and to want to find out more about certain topics. All right, so I'm going to bring on our third speaker, Sue Robbins. Am I right? I've got Sirhajwan here. Sue Robbins is our third speaker of the day. She is a senior lecturer in the Department of Language Studies at the University of Sussex and is an experienced teacher and a teacher trainer. Sue is here today with us because she is also an ELTons finalist for the year in the category of Excellence in Course Innovation. Sue's course is called Develop Your English with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDGs. Sue, your 5 minutes starts now.
We know that textbooks are still the main resource used in schools wide, and so given the huge number of English language learners in classrooms around the world, textbook content can have real impact. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time. We've been hearing about ways to prepare our learners for a complex world. You'll probably hear me echo some of the things that both Sam and Mariela have already said. But I wanted to share with you 3 things that were on my mind when I was planning and writing Develop Your English, particularly thinking about how materials can help prepare learners in the way we've been talking about. So the 3 things are listed on the slide, but essentially I was thinking about the fact that when classroom conversations really engage learners, so much happens. So I wanted to build conversations into the materials because I've seen, and I'm sure you have too, how conversations can create motivation, they can bring English to life, and they can also help shape individuals' thinking. Secondly, I wanted to use my expertise to respond to global challenges. And thirdly, I was interested in creating materials that present English as an international language or as a lingua franca. So first, the role of classroom conversations. To improve our learners' communicative competence, we include as much dialogue as we can in our classrooms. And these conversations matter because they're not just a vehicle for the practice of language items. They contextualize language in a meaningful way. Between 1 and 2 billion people speak English globally, which means that actually at least 3/4 of the world's population don't speak the language in which information about global issues is often disseminated. So using the SDGs in our classrooms to contextualize language learning can help share information about 21st century issues. You can see on the screen what Chong, one of my students who reviewed Develop Your English, had to say about this. And you can also see a take action task, which essentially asks students to consider their habits, make small adaptations that are possible in their context in order to bring about change for the common good. The Education for Sustainable Development approach that underpins the materials is about giving learners opportunities to acquire the knowledge, skills, and values that they need to address world challenges. I also wanted to address the 3 things on this slide. I gave Develop Your English a Creative Commons license, which means it's completely free. And I'm hoping to go some way towards removing barriers to education and skills development and provide teachers and learners with access to knowledge and opportunities to build capacity. It is, excuse me, it is essentially an e-textbook, but it can be downloaded in other formats, which makes it easier to tailor to local needs based on available resources. Access to the platform is free, no sign-ups are required, and this makes it easy to share. The platform also embeds a range of accessibility features that promote inclusive education. And you can see what Raquel, one of the other student reviewers, had to say about this. So thirdly, English is most commonly used as the lingua franca between speakers for whom English isn't their primary language. And so our changing roles often include teaching learners how to navigate diverse communication contexts. In this textbook, the audios include speakers who are using their English in this way. The texts are written by authors from around the world, which exposes learners to a range of perspectives. You can see Cecilia's response to this on the slide. And the pronunciation tasks are not designed to train learners in a native speaker model. They focus on a set of features that research has shown speakers of English as an international language most need when communicating with each other. So if you haven't had a chance to look at Develop Your English yet, I think you can find the link in the chat. I think that's right. So I hope you enjoy having a look at it. Feel free to use it in any way that suits your context. And also feel free to share with students and colleagues who might be interested. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue. It's so easy when you're thinking about global issues and sustainable goals by the United Nations to think of something so big and so outside ourselves that it's almost difficult for us as educators and also for our learners to imagine. But what I love, Sue, is the fact that you've brought it home, that it's a personal journey as well, and showing learners role models that use English as a lingua franca, that they can relate to, that they can set goals to be like, is such a personal experience. So thank you very much for that, Sue. Up next, we have our final speaker for this session, Dr. Sirhajwan Idek. Sirhajwan is his school's head of research and innovation, and he is based in Malaysia. He guides his students in developing projects and presenting them in English. Sirhajwan is here today because he is also a finalist for the ELTons in the category of local innovation for his innovation, Virtual Remote Life, VRL. Sirhajwan, over to you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chia. So my presentation on my project is called Virtual Remote Life. So it stands for, so the acronym is VRL. Virtual because it's done on virtual platform, Zoom and Google Meet. It's remote because it's connecting people, it's connecting students and teachers from different countries and different parts of the world. And it's live. That's very important because they are communicating in real time. No pre-recorded video, no delay communication, which is very important for English language. Now, my project, it consists of several activities, but I'm going to just talk about the 3 main activities. First one is conference presentation, second one is master class, and the third one is exchange class. And of course, there are other activities too. So I'm going to focus first on the conference presentations. So this is the platform where the students, they are presenting their ideas, their advocacy, their projects in real time in international virtual conference. And these virtual conferences, they are free of charge. We are able to collaborate with some academic organizations for our students to take part in it. So, there are lots of benefits of it. So some of the screens, the pictures that you see, those are the screenshot of my students' presentations. So there are lots of benefits of it. The first one is that they speak English in an immersive real-time setting. So that's very important because English is not our native language. So in Malaysia, we speak our indigenous language, which is the first language that we learn. And then we have our national language, that's Malay language. And then English comes in third, which is spoken as the second language. So it's very important for the students to have an environment where they can speak English in real life setting, right? So an international conference is a perfect avenue for that. So they feel very appreciated, acknowledged, and trusted. So that it empowers the students when they are given the opportunity to present in virtual conferences, although it is a virtual conferences, but they feel very appreciated. They have that sense of accomplishment and sense of belonging. And that's very important for English language learners, and that's very important for every student to have. And it's a stepping stone for them to voice out their ideas, advocacy, and opinions. So you see, we are Asian society. So Asian society, they tend to be very quiet, especially in Malaysia, the students, they tend to be very quiet. They don't express their ideas. So this gives them the opportunity to express their ideas and of course to take active actions in it. So they learn multimedia and digital skills. They learn all the how to do the slideshow, infographics, and videos. They practice language discourse as speakers of as non-native speakers of the language. It's very important for them to practice on discourse strategies, like how to construct sentences, how to communicate meaning in a very effective way. And of course, they become very motivated in it. So the second activity, that's a master classes. So it's a series of virtual classes. Sorry, it's a series of virtual classes conducted by teachers from different countries. We have teachers from educators and teachers from the UK, from Japan, from Nigeria, and I think you know Alan Malley. He's very famous. So they're conducting a lot of lessons on different topics. So the students are able to learn from it, and we don't do it just for our students, but we also live stream it across the country. So teachers and students from other parts of the country are also able to attend these classes. And the last one, it's the exchange class. So basically, it's pretty much like traditional classes, but they are done online, and the students, they enroll in classes that they are interested to take for the next 3 months. So it's done 3 months for every cycle on weekly basis. So I was able to do this in collaboration with a few schools from the other Southeast Asian countries, to an organization known as CMIO, which is the regional education organization in Southeast Asia. So yeah, the whole idea is to turn students into change makers. I think that's what Mariela has been saying, to contextualize the problems in their community, which what Sue has been saying, and of course English language classes. Sam has been saying it's the class that gives them the most freedom, and that's very true. As somebody who doesn't speak English language lesson is always the class where the students can actually pretty much do anything. So one of my students, she was able to launch her own social enterprise where she converted fabric waste, pre-loved cloths and stuffed toys into puppets, and she used the puppets to educate and entertain children. And she enlisted the help of special needs individuals to help sew these puppets. So that's wonderful. That's all from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sirhajwan. It was so interesting to see real life examples of all your different students and their presentations and how they're really connecting to the real world through your project. You know, today we've had 4 different speakers. We started with Sam Whittam, who told us a little bit more about global issues and the complexities that students face in the world we have today. And he introduced us to this concept of having students become agents of change in this world. And that concept was taken forward by Mariela, who then talked about how we can help students understand global citizenship and help them, inspire them to make those changes within their local communities and their lives. Then Sue Robbins came along and told us how we can help students respond to real world content, to communicate and use English in the real world. And that was taken in a little bit further in his own direction by Sirhajwan, where we showed students who were able to actually engage people from the real world, from all around the world, having exchange classes and listening to lecturers from all around the world, and performing English to the people outside the classroom, which is extremely inspirational. We have all the panelists, all the finalists back on the panel here with us live, and we have a little bit of time to answer some questions. I'm going to bring up a question that there's an overlap of 2 questions that I'm going to conflate into one. We have Raluca, who says, how can we effectively help young learners understand and empathize with aspects and issues from very different cultures to their own? So on the topic of culture, and this is echoed by Zahira from Facebook Live, saying that when we're discussing about, you know, other countries, the norms, values, and cultures, how can we help students to be familiar with these aspects of the world as a whole? So again, dealing with cultures, norms, values. How do you think we can help students with this? Feel free to jump up.
Is it okay if I jump in first? Sorry. I think that the empathy side, it's not something we can push. It's not something that we can force onto the students. Like, it's not something we should try and do that. when I always tell teachers, when you're doing the SDGs, the best thing to do is explain that there are sensitive topics. There will be some sensitive topics because we're looking at the real world, and it's how we approach that. And obviously, with young learners, there are certain ways that we want to stay away from certain things. There's no need to go too hard. But as I said in my 5 minutes, that my first step would be to try and connect something with what the learners recognize in their local environment, and then build it up, and then we show the one in another country, in another culture, and then we compare and contrast. So that's the way. And with the empathy, I think it just naturally follows along with it, that it's human nature, I think, to care about other people.
That is true. And Sirhajwan, you actually have connected those students with people from other cultures. Do you sometimes find yourselves having a debrief after, let's say, meeting a different class from a different country or a different speaker from a different country? Do your students feel like they want to talk about those differences they noticed in what they learned about other people's norms and values and cultures?
Well, I'm teaching young teenagers. So they don't, I think teenagers nowadays, the young people, they have grown to be more, because they're exposed to social media, they have grown to become very appreciative of other cultures. But I think the question just now, it raised about how we can help students from different cultures to like understand each other's culture. And I think I might echo what Sam has said. We can start with something that is recognizable for them. And since I'm not a native speaker of English language, so what we usually do, so we have like in Malaysia, we have our own, we have lots of indigenous tribes. So I come from certain indigenous tribes, so I speak my own indigenous languages, and then we can incorporate that into the English language interaction. So let's say like an everyday object, and then you introduce it. What is it in your language, and then you explain it in English, and then helping the other students from other backgrounds to understand, and then in exchange they can explain certain tools that they objects that they use every day. It's a great start, and then we can go into certain things like celebrations, festivals. I mean, in a country like Southeast Asia, we also talk about celebrations and food. Certain things that are more typical. But of course, there are certain taboos that we might be very careful of. That it might be okay in certain culture, but it's not really okay in the other culture. So that is one of the things that we need to look, that we need to be very careful of. So that's just my input in that.
Thank you. And again, once again, we're talking about bringing something that's so global, something that seems so far away from ourselves, but then bringing it home again, relating it to something we identify with, right? The basics of our identity. What do we believe in? What do we celebrate? What's important to us? Yes, absolutely. We've got another question very quickly from Facebook Live again, from Jorge Luis Hernandez Garcia. How can teachers foster global citizenship in our everyday lesson? Keyword here is everyday. Mariela, would you like to take this question? Because you do mention global citizenship in your talk.
Sure. And actually, I think I can also connect it to the previous question about how to approach these. Yeah. So one of the things that I think can help bring global citizenship into the classroom is to establish the ways of being in the classroom that the teacher feels will foster these values, and global citizenship can be thought of as a way of being. If you think about it as a teacher in your classroom, you're modeling how to encounter something new, how to encounter something you don't know, and how to create connections. So I think modeling curiosity, questioning your own assumptions. So always, and then debriefing, as someone was saying earlier, I think it was you, Chia, talking about, oh, one of the things that, one of the questions that I learned from Harvard education, which is visible thinking, one of the questions they do in visible thinking routines is ask about what makes you say that, to just uncover why a student of any age might be making an assumption or might be thinking in one way or another, rather than as the adult assume we know everything. investigate and model how are you curious with the world. And that helps uncover and take the mystery out of different and help students notice that actually there's always reasons for being the way you are, and then finding the connections and the similarities. So that's one way to bring global citizenship, is to model being a global citizen.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mariela. I love the passion in your voice when you're talking about modeling curiosity, because curiosity is a muscle and we can develop this very important skill in students that desire to learn. And I'm going to connect that to our last question of today, that desire to learn, that motivation. Sometimes when we talk about global issues, it can all be a bit negative, a bit doom and gloom, and everything seems so awful and the world's coming to an end. Things like climate change and floods and other issues. How can we motivate students to be more interested, to be more passionate, and to be more motivated to work with these issues? I'm going to pose that question to Sue, because you deal a lot with the SDGs. What do you think about motivating students?
It's an interesting idea, isn't it? That there's a line we probably need to tread there between raising anxiety about the state of the world, whilst actually attempting to do something that in our own small way could lead to contributing to change for the common good. And so I think what I've done in Develop Your English is I brought in text mostly, and when I say text, I mean reading and listening, that focus on positive action. So it's not an attempt to sort of undermine the degree of difficulty that the world is facing, but it's looking at, what are people doing in their own small way to contribute towards change that could become greater than us as individuals, which mirrors exactly what I said about my own thinking when I'm doing this. It's my own tiny contribution towards not solving, of course, but using the thing that I'm good at to contribute towards perhaps bringing about change in some way.
I love that, saying every little contribution, although it's not little, but it takes away that intimidating, overwhelming feeling of, I've got to do so much. No, you just have to do a little bit at a time, and every little helps. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sue. We've unfortunately run out of time, but I really could be sitting here with this wonderful group of finalists talking for another hour, and I'm sure you will agree. But we have lots more sessions coming up. Up next, don't miss the great AI debate. And if you're asking what is AI, artificial intelligence, then you really need to go to the next session. Is AI a force for good in language education? Is it? Question mark. Starting very shortly. So to attend, do head back to the festival lobby and click join to the next session. I would really like to thank all our speakers we had today: Sam Whittam, Sirhajwan Idek, Mariela, Sue Robbins. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us, and good luck with the ELTons. For those joining us, in a minute, you'll have a pop-up survey. If you're joining on Zoom events, please take 2 minutes to share your thoughts. It would really help us for future ELTons events. Thank you very much. And remember, the next session, the great AI debate. I'll see you there.